strength is basically, when we talk about physical strength, we're talking about on one side we have neural drive or neural efficiency, and the other half we have muscle cross-sectional area, or basically you're talking about how many muscle fibers you have, how thick they are, how dense they are, and how strong the neural impulse is. So when you go, I'm going to push this weight, or I'm going to squat this weight, then you're thinking, okay, you have to be able to fire the muscles quickly and efficiently, and you have to have a lot of muscle to work with. Well, the other thing to that is that how flexibility plays a role and gets married into strength there is that if the goal is strength, flexibility is going to use more of the joint's range of motion. It's going to hydrate the joint with more nutrients because it's going to pump you through a greater range of motion. And flexibility stuff as an accessory thing or as a modification if you conjugate or whatever, flexibility is a good way to kind of change the movement if you want to bias flexibility for a day or a phase or something. But flexibility, okay, is going to use more of the joint's range of motion. So if you're training your shoulder flexibility, right? Let's take the shoulder, for example, in bench pressing, because that's what I'm talking about. But if you start training the shoulder flexibility, right, you start training your internal rotation, you're going to, especially because the shoulder's a ball and socket, it has this rotational aspect to it. So if you're training that, then you're going to be increasing the range in the joint, which is kind of the deepest layer of tissue to the shoulder. So you're going to have more range of motion in the shoulder joint, and then that's going to hydrate it. Whenever you move a joint, that's when you pump the nutrients into it. Your joint's like a sponge, and then the blood pumps the nutrients in whenever you move. So if you move a little bit, it pumps some nutrients, and if you move it a lot, right, it's going to have more range that it's moving through. It's going to have more of that sponge kind of effect. So, and it's going to keep healthy more of the mechanoreceptors and more of the fibers. That's another thing. But so it's going to basically keep working. Like, you won't lose range of motion like I said I did. So that's good for longevity's sake, okay? Because your shoulder's going to keep functioning. And then, it's going to keep it healthy. Okay, cool. It's also going to increase the number of neural pathways, basically. If you study dynamic systems theory, you're going to have, every time you do a movement, if you study a golf swing, and I've never played golf. I don't have a freaking clue how to swing a golf club, but every time that you do it, they did some studies on golfers, they swing the club differently every time. So even though the goal is like throw the football perfectly, swing the golf club perfectly, hockey, whatever it is, you find out how to get the right swing. It's actually, at a neurological level, the way that the muscles fire, the motor units fire, the order that they fire in, the order the muscle fibers fire, right? All this kind of stuff. It's actually going to be different from time to time. So the better that somebody gets at their movement or their sport, they're actually going to perform that neurologically and internally. They're going to perform it in a different way every time. It gets more and more varied. So if you think about it, the blacksmith analogy is pretty good. But if you swing a hammer and you smash a sheet of metal or whatever they do, the more you do that, if you're a beginner and you're a baby, let's say, the baby only has so many ways to coordinate that. It hasn't done it enough. It doesn't know. But if you do it 200,000 times, then after 200,000 times of doing that, you're going to find, well, there's actually a lot of ways I can swing this. I could move the elbow out more. I could lift the shoulder up more. I could fire from the wrist first, which kind of creates this weird whipping effect. You know what I mean? So your body learns these things subconsciously. So it's going to improve the number of options you have internally that your body has to conduct the movement, which is cool because that actually uses different motor units and muscle fibers, which increases your longevity as well, because you're going to have, you're not going to keep running down the same path in the woods over and over again. You're not going to keep using the same muscles and wearing them out, the same fibers, right? So that's cool as well. And the other thing with flexibility being married to strength is that it's going to actually, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to give you more access to more fibers. So the more flexible you are, right, the more tissue you can train. And I've talked to a bodybuilder before who basically told me, if I get more flexible, I'm going to have to train all those fibers. Yes, but it's also going to make your transitions better when you're on stage, because you're going to be able to rotate your torso and you're going to be able to move into these positions more actively, and it's going to be more fluid. It's not going to look as difficult. You're going to be able to hit fuller contractions in positions, things like that. And also, yes, you are going to have to train those extra fibers when you increase your flexibility in the joint, because then it's going to open up the range to move, and now you're going to have all these other muscle fibers in the chest and things that you can, so you could add some tissue here, but as I open it up, now you've got more fibers that are getting recruited. You can do presses and things to a further range of motion. So, right? So you got more fibers you can train. So flexibility being married to strength is great.